Welcome to 30 minutes of hell, the field of 60 with Coach Eric Musselman. Great to have you, Coach. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
There he is.
Great to join you.
There he is, Coach. Listen, you've been busy. I'm glad now that we got a little bit of time to exhale, although you're still on the phone. I think you got 2 cell phones here talking to all kinds of different people. It never ends. You don't even have. Now, as we record this, it's round 2 of the Masters. You get a chance to dive into that at all? Tiger's back. He's feeling it. He's in contention.
Pat, 0 time spent following the Masters. Last night, I actually was watching Mason Jones play in a playoff game with the LA G League team. My wife was glad they lost so that I didn't have to continue to have G League playoff games on in our house. Immediately upon that game ending, I went straight to the Padres Diamondbacks game. Opening night at MLB. So from here on out, it's San Diego Padre games late night every night.
That's right. You know what? I probably should have thought about that. For me, it's Red Sox Yankees tonight. That's our opening night. So there's a lot of
big
hate.
Opening night.
So, Coach, if you see some rage in my eyes, it's because the Yankees, because we're playing the Yankees.
I don't want to talk about the rage. I'm going to talk about the outfit you got on.
Yes. Now,
I mean, this is incredible.
So no, I was going to wear that for you. Okay. And I got these are from 1996 and I got proof because it says Converse All-Stars on the shorts. Coach, this is my shooting shirt from 98.
Never seen a shooting shirt like that, Pat. That's so, that thing is so impressive. I got to tell
you. Do you know how heavy these things are? Like, it's like bulletproof. So we go on the road, we get, and the thing is, Coach, I was smart enough not to take mine. I took someone else's. Right. So it has his jersey number on there so I wouldn't get in trouble that mine was missing. So I got up. You'll like this one, Coach. Me and one of my teammates, Guy Whitney. Now, don't tell anybody about this. We actually took a couple of chairs, put them in his trunk, and sped out of Bud Walton Arena. We actually backed up his, I think it was a Honda Accord or something, and threw a bunch in there. It's still got chewed bubble gum. It's still got chewed bubble gum on the bottom. That's 1997 bubble gum right there, Coach.
This is really impressive, Pat.
All right, one more thing, then I'll start asking you quick. First of all, I got the Razorback Pop-Tarts. See, this was the memorabilia one you show. Razorback Pop-Tarts. I got the Razorback Jello molds. And check this out. It's a brick from the Boston Garden.
Wow.
The original.
Wow.
The original.
That is something else. Well, now that I'm looking at that warm-up, do you think there's any way we could ever get that logo on a uniform, or do you think it gets shot down?
Oh, I'm pretty sure everybody would love that. I'm pretty sure
on a uniform. We obviously have a couple uniforms with the hog. I'm wondering if we could go with that right there on a uniform for a throwback game.
Oh, there's no doubt. You got my vote. By the way, that your uniforms with the hog on there, that's my favorite, man. I love those.
Impressive.
Coach.
Yep.
I love them. You talk about branding, right? And that's something that you excellent at it. Is that something you've always, is it come natural to you? Or do you put a lot of thought into whether it's wearing certain shirts at press conferences or all that stuff. I mean, you're one of the best, if not the best in the country at understanding branding. Where did that start?
A couple places, Pat. It's interesting because on my mother's side of the family, her brother and her father were really big in Pepsi. And obviously, if you own a Pepsi plant, branding becomes really important, especially if if your individual Pepsi plant creates a new water type drink. So her side of the family, meaning my mom's, really into marketing because of Pepsi, obviously. And then my dad, when I was growing up, 4th, 5th grade, and he was coaching at the University of Minnesota, they had a pregame warm-up, unicycle, spin the ball. That sold Williams Arena out, but everywhere we went, in the trunk of our car was Golden Gopher t-shirts. So if I said, hey, Dad, after practice, I said, hey, Dad, I want to go grab a McDonald's hamburger, he would say, all right, well, let's go. We'd go inside. I'd look back and he'd have 30 shirts in his arm and he'd be passing them out while I'm ordering a hamburger. It's the most embarrassing thing ever. I'd get back in the car, say, Dad, that's so embarrassing. He'd say, no, you know what it's called? It's called marketing. Those are human billboards. They're all going to wear that Golden Gopher men's basketball shirt. And everywhere we went, he had the trunk. Every time I looked in the trunk, it was full of t-shirts. So I think, I was raised in a household that marketing was really important. And it's interesting, Pat, Charlie Finley, who owned the Oakland A's and was way ahead of his time with all the A's uniforms and what they did from a branding standpoint. Charlie Finley wanted to hire my dad so bad to coach the Memphis Tams, who he owned in the ABA. And it was all because of, Charlie Finley thought my dad was a great marketer. I don't think it was his basketball. It was he wanted the guy to promote like he did at the University of Minnesota.
Well, it helped. I mean, it's no doubt how important that is. And the thing that I appreciate is from day one, you got it. You understood. Like, obviously I'm biased, but I look at the Razorback program as one of the great programs, so unique because of Northwest Arkansas, the businesses there. First of all, a state of 3 million people. We just got one hog. And, with the businesses up there. So I would get in arguments with folks all the time about how unique it is. And then for you to see that, even before you got the job. I mean, was that something where, so you're at Nevada and or what was your introduction to Razorback basketball? Maybe even was before.
Yeah. It's so interesting, Pat, like growing up in San Diego, California, there was 3 college t-shirts that I wore. It was UCLA, UNLV because of Tark the Shark, and Arkansas. And so somebody my age, Marvin Delp, those guys that played the triplets, Ron Brewer Sr. Yeah. I mean, like I knew those guys, Sidney Moncriefs, these names, like I knew them growing up, even in San Diego, California. And to me, those were the 3 coolest college teams. It was like for a 5-6 year running, Arkansas, UCLA, and the Running Rebels. And so that was the first, thought of Arkansas. But then when Hunter called, we were actually at the Final Four. My wife and I just started diving into as much research as possible. And obviously Coach Anderson had a great program, and when I came into the job, really talented players, 2 NBA level guys and Isaiah Joe and Mason Jones. But then Danielle, my wife, started diving into all the things in Northwest Arkansas. And it was just so impressive. The businesses, the community, and then to start to really figure out like what you just said about one hog and the importance of how important this athletic program, not just basketball, not just football and Coach Pittman, but the entirety of the program athletically is insane. Like baseball games are as fun as football games. I mean, the baseball games here, 10,000 people, and just a really, really unique, one of a kind athletic program in my mind.
So, Coach, I heard your phone ringing. I don't want to keep you if that was another recruit. Okay, if that was another guy.
I'm done. I'm done recruiting right now. I'm on pause.
So take me. I think your quote, and correct me if I'm wrong, was something after you guys playing the Elite Eight game. You're flying home, and you had said something to the effect of, "I'm already planning for next year." So what do you start thinking about when you come off of a season like this? Where does your mind go in terms of next year?
I actually said that, Pat, like on the podium after we lost. Somebody had asked a question, and I basically said, "Hey, I'm turning the page right now to next year, because when you make an Elite Eight or a Final Four or Sweet 16, you're already behind the transfer game." Because you're so immersed in try, like, how do we beat Gonzaga? Like that's what you're thinking. But while you're watching Gonzaga and doing prep, you got to be on the phone because people are already in the portal. And so I wish the rules were a little bit different, to be honest, Pat. I wish that nobody could go in the portal until after the semester ended. Because I think that, one, academically, it would keep college players a little bit more focused. And two, I think it would give coaching staffs a little bit of a pause, and the current players on their team a little bit of a pause. And there would not be so many emotional decisions by the players and people recruiting in the portal. I think there's got to be a little bit of a pause, but there's not. Right now, it's just this constant rush or this constant sprint right when the season ends. And it's tough, you know what I mean? Because you end the season and now you're right into as an important recruiting time frame as ever, and probably the most intense 1 month recruiting period that we have over the course of the year.
Yeah, it's always good to be able to kind of decompress. And for the players, the coaches, and you see it often where guys, I even, stories about players that I think it was like Scotty Thurman and Colas Williamson, after they lose in '94 to Duke, they're crying. "We're coming back next year. We're coming back for our senior year." And Coach Risa was like, "Fellas, no. If you can go to the NBA, you go to the NBA." Like, it's all those emotional decisions, which you're dealing with too. Like, so how do you, you've had to have these conversations with players before. How do you help them through the process of, should I enter the NBA draft? And it's great now where they can go and learn more about it, like Jay Will is doing. So, that stuff's unbelievable. But what's your advice, and how do you guide them through that process?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Pat, like each player or his inner circle or his family, like there's a different role with the coaching staff depending on the player. Some players want, "Hey, tell me exactly where you think I am." Some players include you maybe in an agent process. And, so I think it just kind of depends on the individual or the individual's family or the individual's inner circle. And, I do think that our staff's a little bit unique with myself and Coach Keith Smart and even Anthony Ruda, who coached in the G League. But, sometimes players might say, "Hey, I just want to go to the draft, even if I do have a year." And I think it's a little unique too for some of the players, because it's across the country right now, these guys that have an extra COVID year.
Right.
There's no reason as a player to stress out over this time frame if you're in that COVID year. It's like, hey, you know what? If like Jalen Tate and Justin Smith last year, like their college careers were over, but they got this extra COVID year. And so the conversation was really quick and easy with those guys. "Hey, do you want this pandemic rule where you can come back, or do you guys want to start your pro career. And it was easy for both of them. They wanted to go pro. But I think 12 months later, maybe they have a little bit different perspective now than they did at that time. And so you've got to try to educate players if they want to, hear, Pat, guys say, hey, I just want to go to Europe. If I can't make the NBA, well, okay, where are you going to go in Europe? Does that country pay on time? Does that country pay at all? What would be the pay? And by the way, a lot of those teams overseas are going broke or bankrupt because of the pandemic, and there was no crowds.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of factors that go into these decisions. And we feel like we have a staff that's really experienced in that. Sometimes it's utilized and other times, like I said, players just want to take that next move in their career, which there's no right or wrong answer, because really you only find out over time. And
that's Coach. That's what I was going to say. My experience, I mean, it was, I just, there's no regrets, but looking back at different things that I could have done, just leaning on people who understood the process. It's gotten a lot better to where it was 25 years ago, where I didn't know, there wasn't as much information. It wasn't, it was a lot different. So I think it's better now. But like you said, I mean, when you go overseas, I went to Denmark, Coach, play overseas. They gave me a bicycle. True story. I rode a bicycle to practice in games. There was no vehicle. There was no car for me to drive. So, I mean, there's just so many things. I hope those guys lean on you, because frankly, that's one of the great advantages that you have, is understanding that game, the pro game.
Before we move on, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at BetRivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up for BetRivers yet, now is the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, it's more secure, and it's more reliable. Now that basketball season is tipping off, get in on the action at betrivers.com today, or by downloading the BetRivers iOS app. You must be 21 years or older. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And while I got you here, let's talk about the Field of 68 Media Network, where college basketball matters most all year round. This is a digital media and podcast network that we've been building over the course of the last year. We have shows hosted by some of your favorite players covering the program that they love the most. AJ Guyton hosts the House of Hoosier. Eric Devendorf covers Syracuse on the Scorer's Table. Dan Dickow hosts the Gonzaga Bulldog broadcast. We have Florida's Patrick Young and Duke's Andre Dawkins and North Carolina's Shammond Williams and Michigan's Stu Douglas and Illinois' Deion Thomas. The list goes on and on and on. We have more than 30 shows right now. So hit the links below and check them all out. And while you're at it, make sure that you go check out the Field of 12 Media Network, your home for college football.
Well, it's funny because even though I coached in the G League, like if I was a player, I would not want to go to the G League. I would want to be, in the NBA or in a good situation, because the G League's it's not easy. I mean, again, that was part of my life. I lived it. But yeah, you're right. Like the Europe stuff. I mean,
and Coach, by the way, I was in Rapid City. My first year out of college was in Rapid City, South Dakota for the IBA. Now that's
a tough life.
That's a tough life, Coach. After that season, I said, I'm going back to Arkansas to get my degree, because I hadn't got my degree yet. So I went back to school after playing that 1 year in IBA.
Well, that's a great point, Pat, is just the value of your degree. I mean, there's a huge price on that, because when you're done playing basketball, that's going to really determine your income for many, many years. And that's important. And sometimes it gets lost, it gets lost across the country right now. The importance of that college education is so important for any person from those ages, especially if you play basketball after you're done playing, which is roughly 35 at most. So 35 to 65, that education becomes as important as anything.
Yeah, it sure does. So I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit. So when you're recruiting high school guys or looking at transfer portal guys, what type of play? Like, what do you value in terms of, or like even when you get to know a player? Like you can see his stats, you can pull up video, but what are some of the other things you look for in terms of maybe it's leadership, character, and how do you find out those things about a player?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that go into the recruiting process. I think high school recruiting, Pat, you get to know a kid or a young man way more. You get to know his family. In the portal, it happens so quick, and these guys are getting flooded so much. And like last year, we were in the 300s 3-point shooting. And so people are like, well, you need to get 3-point shooting. It's like, yeah, I know that. But we're not an NBA team. You don't draft,
Right.
The general public doesn't understand how hard it is to make someone's top 5 list. There's a lot of Power 5 schools with, good campuses. And so you got to make someone's top 5, then you got to get them on camp. Then you got to get somebody to say yes. So sometimes rosters are not balanced. And a lot of it is because you don't necessarily, you might want a shooter, but you might not be able to get a shooter, or a shooter might cause someone else to transfer. And so there's so many things that go into the landscape of recruiting right now. Like our team right now, as we're sitting today, moving forward, we need more perimeter shooting. So we got to get our guys to become better shooters that are under our umbrella now, that are in our program. Those guys got to get better shooting in order for us to have a successful year like we want to have.
So here's one other thing I'm curious is when you are building for the season, and it may sound crazy, maybe it's just because we just got done with the NCAA tournament, but do you think about building a team for the tournament to win the regular season? Is it, are they connected in any way? Only because you see teams that have really good regular seasons a lot, and we understand that it could just be one 40-minute game, one and done, and that's just the life of the NCAA tournament. How do you think about building your team or peaking at the right times? And what do the strengths and weaknesses of your team?
Well, I think that our job in college basketball is how do we advance in the tournament as long as possible. I think that, SEC regular season, SEC conference tournament, like those are, we would, we're as competitive, like we want to try to win those, no question. Right. I'm not saying we don't, because we know to do that's incredible. But above all else, and I learned this at Nevada, like we tried so hard to win conference tournaments, regular season, and maybe I didn't push the team to a point like I had the last 2 years here, where, all right, now they know, like, we're not losing another game. Like, we don't want to have another practice like that. Because I felt like after we lost LSU last year, Pat, and we had a practice like we did, and we knew we had to go to Alabama, I knew that Alabama game was in jeopardy based on us having no legs. And Coach Oates said that watching us play looked like we had no legs, but I was willing to sacrifice that 1 week for what might happen down the road. And so I do think it's important that you have long range goals and not just short term goals.
Yeah, that game. And listen, for everyone listening, it is not easy to go to midweek February game or whenever that was. Maybe it was mid-January, cold midweek. Oh man, it's just difficult to go there anyway. That's the travel side of it. That's the grind. You know that. So what did you learn from let's just say the Duke game? Do you look at that game and then say, like, not change anything, but you must learn from that, right? Learn from your wins and your losses. So what have you learned from last year's tournament, this year's tournament, when it comes to the kind of player you want to bring in or the kind of style you want to play?
Well, I think for sure, Pat, and I think both years, Duke and Baylor were better teams than us. I think if we played them 10 times, we would not win 5 of those 10. I mean, they were better. They were better than us, not just on that given night. They were just better teams than us, quite frankly, and that happens. I thought that strength-wise, body-wise, as a whole, not this individual versus that individual, but just as a whole, the size factor was a little bit different with those 2 teams maybe than other teams. Now, Gonzaga was real big, but their bodies, strength-wise, was not like Baylor. And so it was the size and the strength factor with Duke and Baylor. So we're trying to get a little bit bigger across the board. But style of play-wise, I mean, I think, you got to, whatever your strengths of your team or the roster is, you got to then kind of go in that direction. So this year we found out we're not going to outscore people. We maybe tried to do that earlier. 2 years ago with Mason and Isaiah Joe, like, we tried to outscore you. We tried to out 3-point shoot you. Really simple. How do we have 5 more threes than our opponent? Then we can win that game.
Right.
This year it was, how do we stop people? I don't know what it'll be next year until we get everybody here and can kind of figure it out.
Coach, I had my boy Scooney Penn, who I grew up with. He started at BC and Ohio State. Then he got drafted by Atlanta Hawks. I had him on the podcast last week. And he's currently assistant coach for the Grizzlies. And he said that you were the summer league coach. And the reason I bring this up, Coach, he said you jumped out of your seat when you were coaching the summer league for the Atlanta Hawks and yelled. And did a tooth pop out? Did one of your teeth pop out? Did he remember that correctly, or he is so long ago?
No, he did. I got my front tooth knocked out when I was playing pickup ball one time, and it was a tooth that had been permanently, screwed in. and that, I'll tell you what, PB, that was it was in the Boston Shaw Summer League.
Yeah. We
went 7-0, and I think that team had on it, Udonis Haslem was a non-drafted rookie, and we had 3 first-round picks. Cal Bowdler from Old Dominion. Mm-hmm. We had DeMar Johnson from Cincinnati. And Deion Glover from Georgia Tech. And Pete Babcock, our general manager, was overseas, and he kept calling, asking about the summer league. And I kept saying, hey, our best player is Udonis Haslem. No, come on, Muss. We got to worry about our first-round draft pick. I'm telling you. So we kept having these conversations, and Udonis ended up going and playing in Germany, and now look, 18, 19-year pro. But it's so funny. He was better than all of our first-round draft picks on that team.
It was funny because we were in France together, me and UD. And it must have been like 03, something like that. And yeah, you could tell, man, he was just a different dude. It was too bad because I played in that Shaw Summer League in '99. So I think it was 2000 when you guys did, because Scunia was a year behind me. Coach, I got to tell you, I got the same thing. My tooth is loose, and I'm getting 2 of them replaced next week because I caught an elbow. And as you can see, these are my temporaries right here. When they take these out, I got to wear this thing for like 6 months.
That's not a fun process.
No, but hey, what are you going to do? It's just part of it. You know what I'm saying? That's funny. So do you keep up with you able to keep up as a lot with the NBA?
Right now. Yep.
Now, yeah.
So right now, I mean, I'll dive in. It's actually funny. I went to work out this morning. I came back. My wife had a surprise for me. So when we were at Arizona State, we didn't own, we rented a place, and the place had 3 TVs. It was a main screen and then 2 on the side, and I could have 3 different things going. Well, I walked in today and we had a bunch of people working on a wall. And so in our main room, we're now going to have 3 TVs. And so she surprised me. So we'll have an NBA playoff game going, the Padre game going, and then whatever my wife wants to watch on the 3rd TV.
Hey, at least you're not in the shed outside anymore, Coach. At least
That's
she's
true. No more pool house. Now we got 3 TVs we can share.
Coach, man, I appreciate it. I wanted to have a little bit of fun with you, and I think we did. You know, I appreciate what you do. Represent the university great. Excited. Number 2 high school recruiting class. But come on now, we're there. We're close. And for what it's worth, they say the number 1 transfer recruiting class. So I feel good, man. I feel really good.
Well, thanks, PB. I mean, we had a blast. The greatest thing is I got to see that logo. That logo give me some ideas for some throwback night. We got to try to make it happen. I'm going to get on the phone with Hunter Yurachek right now and see if we can turn that into a uniform.
I love it, Coach. I love it. I'll be down there in a few weeks. Come check you guys out. It's been too long.
I'd love it. We'll get a game of horse. Maybe not horse. Maybe just lunch, because I know you would take me to the cleaners in horse.
Hey, no, listen. Hey, Leo Papil told me some stories about you in high school, Coach. Come on now.
I almost went to Boston College.
Did you really?
Yeah. Yeah. Kevin Mackey was the assistant coach.
Yeah.
Gary Williams was the head coach. On my recruiting visit, Michael Adams was my host.
Oh, was he really? He could stroke it. Michael Adams. He had the little hitch in his shot, right? Remember that little hitch in his shot?
So good. But they told me that I couldn't come straight from high school, that I had to go to a prep school on the East Coast. My dad was coaching the Cavs. And quite frankly, 5 minutes of watching Michael Adams in practice led me to, I'm going to the University of San Diego. There's no way I'm coming to BC.
It'd have been too cold for you anyway, Coach. You know what I'm saying?
Talent level was way too high for me. University of San Diego, Toreros was perfect.
Nah, you're the man, Coach. You're the man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, PB.
I'll see you soon. All right. Thanks for taking the time, Coach.
Yep. Look forward to seeing you, PB.
All right. We'll do.
Later.
Thank you.